What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we are going back to basics. As I'm sure that for somebody starting the First Descendant in 2025 can be something daunting, as it usually is with games of this type that have multiple different systems at work that you can essentially chip away at and do things on to advance your character and to essentially just start accumulating power and leveling up and just finding the gear and the descendants that you need. It can be a lot, and there's a lot of, I think, information overflow in a way. And so just as it's daunting to play a game like this right at the beginning, it's also daunting to make a video like this because certainly there is a lot to cover. I will, however, try to condense it into some basic points that will get you off to a fantastic start. Of course, this stuff will be set into chapters in the video, so if you want to jump around, obviously feel free. And then, of course, based on exactly how this works out, and if there is, I would say, some questions and that sort of thing that derive from this video, I can, of course, always do a follow-up where we can start looking at more, let's say, advanced and end game related activities. But yes, first things first. First Descendant is a looter shooter that essentially has you doing certain activities, and as you usually do with looter shooters, you repeat them hoping to get specific drops that you get, and then you use that to actually empower your character, which will make you stronger so that you can go do some other activities and so on and so forth. It kind of sounds not that great when I explain it like that, but yeah, it is what it is. And if you boil any looter shooter down to its, bare facts, then it kind of comes down to that. But when you start off right at the beginning, your first thing that you should be concentrating on is getting through normal difficulty, which is considered the story or the campaign of the game. There's really no reason for you to take long in this, meaning like don't spend time trying to farm certain things, anything like that. Your objective should be to get through normal difficulty as fast as possible so that you can access hard difficulty in the game. And the reason for that is manyfold, but actually the main one that actually matters is the fact that all of the drops that you get in the game have higher drop chances in hard difficulty, and hard difficulty is where you can access most of the activities, most of the bosses, and most of the things that you need to farm. So when you start out the game, you are basically gonna have your game map and you're gonna go region by region, and this is in normal difficulty as I mentioned, and you're gonna go through the areas in a region and it's going to culminate in a boss fight. Now these bosses look like this, so if we just go over here and we go here, these would be your void intercept bosses, which are the normal bosses. Now these are gear checks for you as you progress your way through the normal story mode. Now you can attempt these bosses solo and you can attempt them in groups. And generally speaking, the mindset is that you should be doing these in groups because surely you can get help from other players to help you out. However, personally for me, having done this multiple times, is the fact that you are actually able to better gauge the level of your descendants' power by doing this solo. It absolutely helps you to try it out in group mode and see if you can catch some pointers from the other players as to what you should be doing. Generally speaking, the boss fights are very straightforward, but there are some nuance to some, attacks and things like that that you can avoid. But the bottom line is it's necessary for you to proceed through these one boss per region as mentioned gear check, essentially to see that you are ready for the difficulty that is to come. Because for example, in the game, when you are starting out in the first zone versus when you're finishing in the final zone, the difficulty of just the normal enemies and their attacks and all that is vastly more powerful in, like, for example, the last couple of sections. And if you haven't been gearing up correctly, making sure that your power level has accumulated accordingly, then of course you will be having some issues. So that would be the first thing that you would need to concentrate on, is just getting yourself through normal difficulty. That is going to culminate essentially in a fight with Swamp Walker, and then you'll have Hangman available, which you can do essentially as the prologue. But at this point in time, you are ready to switch to hard difficulty. Now, how does leveling in the game actually work? Well, there's different kinds of leveling, but essentially it comes down to this. You have your descendant that you're currently playing with level, and this is from 1 to 40. You also have the weapon that you're currently using, which has a proficiency, but you can pretty much see that as a leveling system, and that also goes from 1 to 40. And generally the same speed at which you accumulate XP for your descendant, you also accumulate that for your weapon. There are some ways where you can alter that, and some activities give you more than the other, but as a baseline, that's kind of like true. But then you also have something called mastery rank. Now, see this as your account level, all right? So descendant levels are independent from your account level, and your account level is used to actually lock certain, I would say, better options, better gear and stuff like that behind it. Like, for example, you can see that it goes from 1 to 30, and this actually provides tangible benefits to your actual account, where it gives you more module capacity slots, more descendant modules, more presets that you can save, more equipment that you can store, and everything like that. But certain weapons are also locked behind this. Like, for example, one of the more powerful weapons in the game that you would probably focus on getting at eventually Enduring Legacy actually sits behind a high mastery rank, aka account level, meaning that you cannot get this weapon right from the beginning. But the main reason for this section is I just want to explain that you are actually leveling multiple things at the same time. Your descendant level and your weapon level come from, basically killing enemies and, completing activities and stuff like that, whereas your mastery rank actually levels a little bit different. Each mission that you do in hard difficulty, actually, and I can maybe just show, hopefully one of them has it, you can notice that there is, under the main reward, it mentions that there is a cash a reward, there's money, then there's an XP reward, there's a weapon proficiency reward, and then you can see there's 200, and that's actually the mastery as well. So every one of these missions can essentially be replayed one more time once you unlock hard, and the very first time you complete them, you're actually going to get a little bit of MR level as well. Likewise, also, the first time you level a descendant all the way from 1 to 40, you are going to get mastery for each one of those levels, and again for the weapons. And that can be any quality of weapon. So there's absolutely benefit in leveling blue weapons, purple weapons, and gold weapons all the way to 40, because all of them equate to more mastery level. Nonetheless, at the moment right now, in the current state of the game, as of the recording of this video, the maximum mastery rank that you can have is 28. So we still haven't been able to reach 30, which currently in the game is the maximum rank. Now, before we actually dive a little bit into, details about how to make a build and, which descendants should you be picking and things like that, I also want to mention that while I am a content creator for the First Descendant, and obviously I want you to watch my content, the most powerful source of information for this game is actually in the game. There is a fantastic system in the game that can help you find information on every single thing that you need to be able to improve the power of your character or craft a certain item or do anything in the game. Let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, somewhere along the line, you see, there's this weapon called the Python, okay? And I'd like to be able to get this weapon. So what do I as a player have to do to get Python? Okay, so what you can do is in the game itself, there's a menu that you can press that looks like this. This gets you to your journal, access info, your map. So basically, if you press your map key, you have some tabs at the top here. And what you're looking for is you're looking for this tab here, access info. Now, this is basically like a guide for the game and has every single item, descendant, reactor, external component, materials, every single thing that you could potentially be looking to find in the game is in here. And before you have to go looking around on the internet, anything like that, I absolutely advise you to start mastering looking for items inside this, because this will make your life a lot easier. By all means, absolutely log on to my channel and look at my videos and the other content creators for the First Descendant, but this is really your best source of information, and it is right at your fingertips. So we just said right now that we want to find Python. So we go to weapon, and now you'll see here we have all of the ultimate weapons. All right. So we are going to look for Python. And then when we click on that, it is going to show us that this weapon, and basically how this game works, is that all of your ultimate weapons, all of the best weapons in the game, also all of the descendants, they require you to find items in the game world, either by drops or by farming them. And these items are then taken and researched, and that actually gives you the items. So you can see that Python has overall 4 main items that then basically researches into the weapon, and each one of those 4 main items has other smaller items. So let's say, for example, I have all this shit, but the only thing that I'm missing is the Python Polymer Syncytium Blueprint. Of course, I picked the one that's the most difficult to say. Then what you would just highlight it, and then you can see there it says acquisition info, boop. And when you open this up, it shows you every single activity, every single thing in the game that you can do that has a chance of giving you that item. And furthermore, you can hover over it and you'll see the percentages of chance that you have of getting that item from a specific material. But like, for example, in this, it's more complicated because you need a specific pattern to get this. So again, you have to, let's say, for example, you look at this and you say, okay, you know what, we're now in hard difficulty, so let's ignore the ones where it says normal. And we say, you know what, we have, let's see, these are all reactors. All right, so we can go here and we can click on this, and now we can see we can either get one of these items from doing this strategic outpost, or we can get it from essentially doing this hard dungeon. So let's say you opt to do the hard dungeon. You can click on it and it's actually going to show you exactly where you need to go. And furthermore, here you can actually also see the other items that might be dropping out of this dungeon, including purple weapons, mods, and that sort of thing. So the main point that I'm trying to make is, look, that, you know, journal in thing is filled with a lot of information. But the point is, you need to start just spending some time in here and actually getting comfortable with the system, because it can make your life super easy. What you can also do here is you can press U to track the item. Then it will actually, well, at the moment right now, of course, I am tracking, you know, 4 out of 4 items. You can't see it behind my head. So, but the point is, you can track 4 items at once, and you can also keep track of how many of these items you have still to farm and still to look for. So yes, this is a really powerful system, and you should be spending some time in that to just sort of like familiarize yourself with exactly all of the different pages and basically the information that you're looking for. Alrighty, so then once you now know which descendant you want to play in, of course, by the way, a lot of these topics that I'm mentioning here right now, I have dedicated videos to. I have descendant tier lists and weapon tier lists and explanations of how to build those weapons and those descendants on the channel as well. And of course, including all of that information in this video is completely beyond the scope of it. But, and also, by the way, it goes without saying, guys, but if I'm breezing over a topic or something and you would like more information about it, pop the question into the comments and I can, like I said, do a follow-up video, or I could just answer it in the comments and point you towards the right video. But when you have the descendant that you want to play, and again, I can't tell you who's the best descendant, I can tell you which descendants I prefer, but in the end, it comes down to your playstyle, and I personally believe that every single descendant is viable in this game. Except for fucking Jaber. Don't choose Jaber. Don't let anybody ever persuade you to try Jaber. Jaber is liquid ass. But any other descendant is fantastic and is really good. Now, your descendant's power, all right, is derived from, I would say, 3 different places. First of all, your actual build of your descendant, which is essentially the modules that you use to build it. Now, again, that is outside the scope of this video for me to explain to you why you use certain modules and so on, and that's potentially definitely an idea for a follow-up video. But the point is that you get many different kinds of modules in terms of some affect your power, some affect your defenses, some affect your utility and all of that. But the point is, these cells basically, you know, give your descendant their power based on the modules that you slap into them. Then your next level of power comes from over here, your reactor, all right, which also gives you additional boosts and things like that, and give you additional power boost if you're wielding the right weapon that is configured to your reactor. And then last but certainly not least, your external components. You should think of this as your armor in other games, so like your chest piece and your fucking legs and your gloves or whatever. Similarly, in this game, we have this. So there's no armor system in this game, but the external components is basically this. So each descendant can wear 4 external components, and these external components, there are sets of these that give you bonus effects if you're wearing 2 to 4 pieces, and they also have different substats that can give you resistances, can give you more survivability, and can also give you utility like increased leveling speed and, you know, that sort of thing. So those are the primary building blocks of where power comes from for your descendant. Now, yes, your weapon also matters. And guess what, guys? Weapons also have modules that you can slap into them to also give them more power and more utility, more strength, and that sort of thing. Now, I say that the weapons are also a part, but at the same time, not directly responsible for the power level of a descendant, because some descendants actually don't even need to use weapons at all, and they mostly just use them as stat sticks or something like that, because the actual power of the descendant comes from the descendant's abilities, which are of course these. Now, every single Glay, which is the descendant that you're looking at right now, or Enzo or whatever, they all have the same core abilities. When you equip different modules, you can change those core abilities and you can focus on certain abilities to be the highlight or the star of the build. Now, you could go two ways with this. You can experiment and figure out which of these abilities you like the most and you like to use, and that you will only find by actually playing the game. Or you can of course use guides for descendants, of which there are many on this channel, and then you can basically use that as a guidance for you to be able to build your descendant. Two important vendors for you in the city that will be responsible for your growth and power. And again, I've mentioned at the very beginning, and I cannot stress this enough, you should not worry yourself too much with these systems until you get to hard difficulty. So you could get bogged down in a lot of this stuff and get lost in the fucking sauce while you're still in normal difficulty, whereas in normal difficulty you should just be pushing balls to the wall as fast as you can to get through that so you can get too hard. But the first vendor I want to mention is the vendor that you research things with. So more descendants, more weapons, everything like that comes from this vendor. This vendor sits over here, and it's a nice. And basically, when you come up to this vendor allows you to, when you have all the items that you are supposed to have to build something, like for example, if I wanted to build this hammer and anvil nanotube, then you can see that we have all of the required items there. I can click on this, I can pay the amount that's needed to research it, and there's a timer that comes up, and that's how long it takes to research. So this is the main way in which you unlock additional descendants, weapons, and things like that for your account. And then the other vendor that's also super important is this dude over here, Cillian. Cillian is the vendor that works with modules. And when it comes to modules, there's a couple of different things that you can do. Modules themselves have levels that you can level up, and you can see that maybe I have one that has like a basic. There we go. So you have a module that starts like this at level 1. And then you can actually spend gold and Kuiper, and these are the two, I would say, main resources of the game. Think of this as more like the Kuiper is more like the module related resource, and gold is more like the overall thing that you pay for pretty much everything. But the bottom line is, at the beginning, your bottleneck will be Kuiper, so you should be careful with not just spending your Kuiper on literally everything, but then eventually your bottleneck will become gold, because the cost for doing certain things of gold is like 5 to 6 million a pop, which is ridiculous. But I just wanted to throw that information in there. I'm getting fucking sidetracked myself, so I just need to rein it in as well. But the bottom line is, you can use this vendor to actually upgrade these modules. These modules increase in strength when you upgrade them, and they also actually increase in their capacity, the amount of power that they need to be able to control them. And keep that in mind, because that's going to be important just now. There's going to be an exam. No, I'm joking, but I'll explain a little bit more about that. So this vendor can do that. This vendor can also dismantle modules, which will give you some Kuiper back. So if you have multiples of modules, you can dismantle it at this vendor, and that will give you some of that resource back that you use to actually upgrade it. And then last but not least, you can also use this vendor to combine modules. Combining 4 modules will yield another module of depending on the role that you get, of like the same family or something like that. And it's often a way that you can basically instead of dismantling and getting a material back, and if you are starting out the game and if you have a lot of the modules missing that you have never seen or picked up, anything like that, combining can be a fantastic way to actually use your duplicate modules to get yourself new modules. So don't be scared of using the system. It's really good. Now, we've discussed leveling up to 40 with your descendant and everything, but unfortunately it's a little bit more complicated than that, because eventually you will want to fully develop a descendant of your choice and fully develop a weapon of your choice. And what I mean by that is that you'll actually have to re-level these items, whether it's a descendant or a weapon, multiple times. And that is how you actually increase the power, because you increase the kinds of mods, or the amount of mods that you can slot in. Now, I'm going to try and explain this as simple as possible, but basically the point is this, okay? when you start out, and maybe I can just turn on the module board like this. When you start out with your Descendant, you will notice that, especially if it's a normal Descendant, and I'll explain the difference between normal and ultimate Descendants just now, but when you start out, you'll notice that your board itself has certain affinities. Now, these are, think of them as manufacturers, and you can see that you can sort between the different manufacturers here. Each manufacturer represents a kind of stat. Cerulean tends to be life and basically defense and that sort of thing, so it's a support, brand. And then, like, for example, you have Xantic, which can oftentimes be utility, and you have Almondine, which is usually like crit and, stuff like that. So, or is that Malachite? Even I don't fucking know the stuff from my head. I think I was right. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm glad. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and leave that in the video. So anyway, the point is, when you start out and when you're designing the build for your Descendant, you have to decide many different things. And again, it's outside the scope of this video, but the point is, if you want to build your Descendant crit, then you have to have multiples of the crit manufacturers so that you can actually put those mods in there. Now, the point is, the first time when you start out with a Descendant, you will only have 2 of these catalyzed, and that's what they call it when you actually assign a manufacturer to it. But every time when you reach character level 40, Descendant level 40, you are able to use an item called Crystallization Catalyst, which is over here, to pick one of these, to assign it to one of these cells, and then apply the socket type. And once you do that, you will consume this item, okay? And you will reset your character level down to 1, and then you'll basically have to re-level again. So if you want to do this, like when you're starting out with 2 of them, that means you'll want to do it another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. You'll have to re-level 9 times if you want to fully catalyze your Descendant. Now, that sounds pretty daunting, but of course there are systems in the game right now, and that have been for a while, that actually allow you to level up very, very fast, as well as level your weapons very, very fast. So it's not nearly as a prohibitive thing as it used to be in the past, when leveling was a little bit slow in the preseason and at the beginning of season 1. Now, there's another thing that you can also do to increase the strength of your Descendant and your weapon, and that is to, and I need to find something that I have not done this with yet. That is going to be daunting. Let me pick maybe this gun, because there's no way that I would have actually done that yet. There we go. So you can also do something called Max Capacity Up, which uses the other very important crafting item in the game, which is Energy Activators. Right, and this, you can see, actually increases your capacity of the modules that you can put onto your Descendant or weapon from 50 to 80. So it's a pretty big jump, and actually allows you to put way more on. So this is a good example of what a weapon that has not been developed at all looks like. You can see none of these are catalyzed, and so on. And the reason why you put manufacturers onto the weapons, and maybe I can just jump back here quickly again to here just to show you that, is basically when you match the symbol, the manufacturer, with the module that you're putting in there, then it uses less than what it usually costs. So let me give you an example. This is a Rutile mod, as you can see there. And so you can see when I put this onto one that is not matching it, its cost is actually increased. Whereas if you put it on somewhere where it is not matched, but it basically can be nothing as well, then it remains at the same cost. However, if I put it into a mod where it matches, like Rutile, you can see now it halves the cost. So it's in your best interest to do this, because think about it this way: the more ones you have that match up, the more modules you can fit onto your deck within the capacity that's essentially available to you. So this is pretty much the main system in which you increase power in the game. And again, like I said, this is actually done in 2 different tiers. So you're doing it on your Descendant and you're doing it on weapons. So both of these systems, and these are 2 different sets of modules as one. Weapon modules are different to Descendant modules. Oof, okay, so that was a lot, and that was like suddenly got a little bit complicated. But I want to end off this video then with telling you just some weapons that you should bear in mind that could be very good for you, especially when you're starting out the game, and will perform very well if you spend some catalysts and materials on them, and also some Descendants who you might potentially pretty much enjoy. So first things first, on the weapon side itself, what you should be targeting at the very beginning are purple weapons, and that's because you aren't necessarily going to have access to all these ultimate weapons. A lot of them are going to be behind your mastery level, and also because some of them are okay but not necessarily something that you should be worrying yourself with at the beginning, because you could have to spend way too much material or time or something like that to develop it, instead of actually just spending that time to, you know, essentially advance in the rest of the game. So I will highly recommend this weapon called the Tamer. It's a machine gun. It performs exceptionally well and essentially is replaced later on by an ultimate version, which is just pretty much the same weapon, just better in literally every aspect. But the Tamer is really good, and it can carry you through a lot of the earlier difficult content in the game, especially the Void Intercept bosses that you're going to fight, who are your stat checks. Now, I do have a Tamer build on the channel as well, so obviously, you know, go ahead and check that out. If you don't like that, Eternal Willpower as an assault rifle is fantastic, and absolutely you should seek this weapon out. It is basically like the assault rifle version of the Tamer. It has high damage and it performs really well, and if you build it in the correct way, once again, there's a build on the channel, then you will actually find a lot of joy from this weapon. And then I also want to mention one ultimate weapon which you will definitely come across in your adventures right at the beginning, and that is Thunder Cage. This is a submachine gun and performs exceptionally well. It is still considered one of the meta choices at the very end of the game. And so because it's the first weapon that you get of the ultimate variety, you might be thinking, well, shit, it's the first one, so it's probably not going to be that fucking great. In this particular case, you would be wrong, because Thunder Cage still performs exceptionally well compared to almost anything else in the end game. So any amount of catalysts and stuff like that that you spend on this weapon will be well spent, because it will still perform even well past the other items that you've already done. Then in terms of Descendants, and this one is the one where I'm probably going to get a little bit of shit, because obviously I have my preferences as to which ones I prefer, and you might be different. But that being said, I also want to just mention that you'll notice that some Descendants you get a normal version as well as an ultimate version. A good example would be this guy over here, Lepic, and then you also have an ultimate version over him, Ultimate Lepic. Please bear in mind that everything, as of right now, as of the recording of this video, everything that you do on normal Epic stays on normal Epic, and everything that you do on Ultimate Epic gets done on Ultimate Epic. If you have the opportunity of choosing between a normal and an ultimate version, obviously develop the ultimate version. And that's because the ultimate versions have slightly increased stats over the normal versions, but nonetheless, their HP is a little bit higher and so on, and so therefore it is, if you want to min-max it, the best way. And then the other thing, of course, is that the ultimate versions of Descendants have access to different modules which can actually flesh out their builds a little bit more. But this is, again, really, I would consider not end game, but this is a little bit more advanced and not something that you should freak out right now. But just bear in mind that if you spend a lot of time and money and catalyst and that stuff on like the basic version of a Descendant, that does not carry over to the ultimate, and that is something that you have to make peace with. The developer is bringing in a system, but at the moment right now it looks like it comes near, I would say, the end of Feb or something like that, possibly even later. It might even be further down the line in season 3. But this is going to allow you to actually have some form of the power of your normal Descendant map over to the Ultimate Descendant. But I just wanted to mention that because it is worth noting. Also bear in mind that not every Descendant has an Ultimate version, so that's also something. Now, one of the more powerful Descendants that you can develop, and that the game also basically hands to you, is Bunny. Bunny is a polarizing Descendant in the way that she gets a lot of shit, she gets a lot of hate, because bunnies can be super strong in an AoE situation, and therefore it can sometimes make the other Descendants that are doing content with you feel like they're not really fucking able to do anything, because you're just blasting and running and just kind of like taking over the whole thing. I don't really give a shit about that, because it is what it is. Personally, I'm happy every time there's a bunny in my group, because it means that we're doing whatever we're doing faster. But you know, if that's something that bothers you and you don't want to fucking ruin other people's play time or something, then just roll solo. But Bunny is an enabler Descendant, because she essentially makes a lot of the farming activities in the game a lot more palatable, a lot faster, a lot more efficient, and you need to do a lot of this stuff to basically get everything else that you need in the game. So She is by far, in my opinion, the highest on the list in terms of like for a new player, because she is going to take a lot of the stuff which might fucking annoy you, having to redo, run, and all of that stuff. She will make that a lot easier because she can do it faster. So Bunny is really good. Obviously, Ultimate Bunny is also really good, and as soon as you can get her, go for that. Then Freyna, and more specifically Ultimate Freyna, is very, very meta as well, and super, super powerful. Again, I have builds for all of these Descendants on my channel, so if you want to see them in action and see what they can do, obviously check those out. But you should be thinking in a way of like building Descendants who are good at group content and who are good at farming, aka Bunny, and building Descendants who are good at killing bosses, aka Freyna. Now, the funny thing about Freyna is she's also good at farming. So once you have access to her ultimate version, you should definitely think about getting that, because she is ridiculously powerful and basically, you know, does a lot for you. The only other Descendant, because honestly, again, like I said, there are so many good ones. The only other Descendant that I would also still call out is Haley. Haley is another boss killing machine, and basically having her and Freyna covers all of your bases in terms of like farming bosses, with maybe the exception of 1 or 2. They are, I mean, Haley herself is ridiculously strong at taking down bosses or just difficult targets for that matter. And by the way, she doesn't have an ultimate version available yet, so you know, if you target her, then basically you're just developing the normal. But those will be the core ones that I would focus at the beginning. I'm 100% sure people are going to give me shit in the comments and say, hey dude, but what about Viesa? What about fucking, you know, Lepic? What about this and that? By the way, when you start the game, there are 3 Descendants that you can pick from. That is going to be this guy, Lepic. It's going to be this Chad over here, Ajax, and it's going to be this lady, Viesa. I think it's perfectly fine whichever one of those 3 you pick. Think of it this way: Lepic is really good at killing bosses, Ajax is really good at surviving, Viesa is really good at AoE. So if you want to, whichever one of those 3 things sounds more appealing to you right off the rip, that's what I should go for. It's not to say that each one can't do the other thing. Viesa can also just absolutely dumpster bosses. She just has to develop a little bit more, where Lepic's a little bit more easy doing that straight off the bat. Likewise, Ajax can absolutely AoE like a fucking monster, but you would have to develop that a bit first. If you want my personal choice, always Lepic, baby. I picked Lepic from the beginning and I didn't look back. Either which way, like I said, I'm sure I'm going to eat some shit for some Descendants that I've left out here. People will mention Sharon, especially her ultimate version also being really good. Another good Descendant is Valby, because she's also again really good at farming and killing bosses. And then of course you have some other ones who interact with certain game systems, like Enzo, who also show their own value in a certain way. But I think that's, you know, beyond the scope of this video. I keep saying that. I should probably make a fucking shirt that says that. But that I think is a good point for us to essentially end off and basically conclude. Now, that being said, I know that there's a lot that I've left out in this video. Maybe I can also mention that if you are looking for the fastest way to level up your character and your weapon, then you should be using over here on the map here, this special operations terminal, and you should be doing these activities. Okay, maybe not hard yet, maybe you can just do normal, but you should be doing these things. Especially I will call attention to the Kingston one, the Fortress one, and I think probably this one over here or that one over there. So these 4, Kingston, Sterile, Fortress, and White Knight Gulch, these are really, really good activities that you can do in groups with other players, and they are not that difficult, but they yield massive amounts of XP for both your weapon and your Descendant, so they can be fast ways for you to essentially fast track your development of those. But yes, like I said, super big video, lots of stuff to cover. I'm sure I've left a whole bunch of things out, and that's of course where the amazing community of this game comes in. Anybody please feel free to chime in the comments with additional things there, and also make some suggestions of what I can do for a follow-up video for this, where we can say, okay, cool, we've now gotten into late game, we've picked the Descendant we want, we picked the weapon, what now? What's the next fucking thing we can do to advance? And we can do that, and then we can kind of like finish off with maybe one final video. That being said, thank you very much for all the support. Everything with the First Descendant on the channel has been fucking popping, and I have nobody else to thank but each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves, and as always, I'll see you next video. Fucking cheers.